If you want to make four total strangers trust each other implicitly, you don't buy them a beer.
No, tough it, right.
Right. You trap them in a burning wagon, throw a javelin through their driver's chest, and just unleash a brutal orc ambush.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today we are unpacking the wildly chaotic, incredibly bloody, and frankly surprisingly hilarious events of a tabletop role-playing campaign's Session Zero.
And, that concept of Session Zero is really crucial here.
Mm-hmm.
In the tabletop gaming space, the Session Zero is typically this, safe administrative starting point, right?
Right. Cozy tavern.
Exactly. It's where you establish the rules, everyone introduces their characters over a figurative or, literal pint at the local tavern. And the storyteller gently sets the tone for the adventure to come.
Except in the material we're looking at today, that cozy tavern trope is just completely obliterated.
Oh, totally destroyed.
The tone for this specific campaign wasn't set with a gentle introduction. It was set with literal fire, friendly fire, and immediate brutal tragedy.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to explore exactly how this specific Session Zero subverts those classic fantasy expectations. We're going to look at how a storyteller bypasses all the awkward small talk and basically forces an instant, profoundly messy bond between total strangers.
Right, because when you dig into the mechanics of this session, you see a storyteller who absolutely refuses to give the players, or you as the listener, a single moment to breathe.
Not one.
It really forces us to examine the psychology of tabletop dynamics. What does it actually take to unite people who have absolutely nothing in common?
Well, let's set the scene and look at who we are dealing with. It's morning. The sun has only been up for a couple of hours.
Right.
And we have this completely fragmented group of travelers making their way along a dirt path toward a frontier town called Phandalin. And right away, the physical positioning of these characters tells you so much about their underlying personalities.
It really does. The spatial awareness and the setup is a great narrative tool. High above the path, you have Whiffer.
The flying guy.
Exactly. He's an Aasimar fighter, which essentially means he's a half-celestial being with angelic traits. He is literally flying overhead, keeping himself physically and probably morally separated from the dirt, the grit, and the ordinary people down below.
Meanwhile, down in the actual dirt, you have a wagon that's been lumbering along for 3 days. Inside, essentially hitching a ride, are two more of our main characters. You've got Boris, who is a cleric of Talos.
And Talos is a god of destructive storms.
Yes, which tells you everything you need to know about Boris's chaotic vibe.
Totally.
And sitting near him is Redir, a gritty fighter who's carrying some serious infernal baggage and a deeply cynical worldview.
So you already have the stark contrast between the celestial fire in the clouds and the cynical travelers in the mud.
Right.
But the real genius of this wagon dynamic lies in the non-player characters, the NPCs who are driving them.
Oh man, the NPCs are just phenomenal.
They're so good.
You've got Wayne, this incredibly sheepish, unremarkable wagoneer who's just trying to do his job. And riding shotgun are these two aspiring young adventurers who are practically vibrating with eagerness to see the world.
Yes, the siblings.
Right. There's Desafortunata, who has this highly exaggerated sassy flair, and her brother Azarado, who speaks exactly like a quintessential California surfer bro.
They are the absolute embodiment of plucky innocence.
Oh, completely.
The session notes highlight that they are desperate to escape their smothering, overly loving parents. They want to make a name for themselves. They're eager, they're loud, and they are completely unequipped for reality.
Which is such a trap, because as a listener, or even as a player sitting at that table, your brain immediately categorizes these two.
Oh, for sure.
You hear the storyteller doing these fully fleshed out, distinct voices for Azarado and Desafortunata, and you think, okay, here's the plot. We're escorting these goofy kids on their first quest.
It's an incredibly effective psychological trick.
It's like in a horror movie where you follow a happy, joking couple for the first 10 minutes.
Exactly. You invest in them, you laugh at their banter, completely unaware that they are just the appetizer for the actual monster.
Yeah.
It's a manipulation of cognitive load. By giving these NPCs such vibrant comedic personalities, the storyteller intentionally monopolizes the player's attention.
Oh, that makes sense.
You're laughing at Azarado's California drawl. You're charmed by his sister's sass. It lowers your guard. You assume the world is going to be this lighthearted, adventurous romp. You are lulled into a completely false sense of security.
Which makes the inciting incident so much more jarring. Because suddenly, out of the brush, steps a wolf.
But not just any wolf.
Right.
This is Vitrovia, our fourth party member. She's a tiefling druid, meaning she has infernal or demonic ancestry, but she spends a lot of time wild-shaped into a wolf.
She just stalks directly onto the path, forcing poor Wayne to yank the reins and halt the wagon.
Yep.
And of course, the plucky siblings see this as their starring moment. The beast has arrived.
They're a big chance to be heroes.
Azzurrato and Desafortunata eagerly draw their weapons. They hop out of the wagon, adrenaline pumping, ready to slay the wolf, save the day, and start their legend. You can practically hear the heroic music swelling in their heads.
And
then the rug is just violently ripped out from under everyone.
because before the siblings can even take a single swing at Vitrovia, the actual threat reveals itself from the tree line. The storyteller executes a flawless, completely lethal bait and switch.
The breakdown of this moment is visceral. In a split second, one flying arrow and two heavy javelins shoot out from the dense trees bordering the path.
Right into the wagon.
Wayne the Wagoneer, Desafortunata, and Azzurrato are all hit squarely in the chest. Wayne, who is just a regular guy with zero combat training, dies instantly.
Just brutal.
And before the siblings can even process that they've been impaled, a raiding party of orcs bursts from the foliage and immediately executes them.
It is an absolute uncompromising slaughter of innocents in the first 5 minutes of the campaign.
Vitrovia, the druid who just wanted to stop the wagon, realizes she's now standing in the kill zone of an orc ambush.
Yeah, she immediately backs off and targets the orc archer. And up in the sky, Woofer sees the massacre unfold and has to dive bomb into the chaos.
Okay, I actually have to stop right here and push back on this strategy a little bit.
Sure.
Because from a player's perspective, this feels incredibly antagonistic. If I'm sitting at that table, I might honestly feel a little cheated. You just spend all this time building up these kids, giving them voices, making us care about them, and then you just delete them in a single round of combat.
Yeah, it's harsh.
Doesn't that shatter the social contract at the table? Doesn't the storyteller risk just completely alienating the players right out of the gate by being that ruthless?
Well, it's a massive risk, absolutely. But if you look at the mechanics of group dynamics, it actually solves one of the hardest problems in tabletop gaming. Think about the alternative we discussed earlier, meeting in a safe tavern. When you start in a tavern, there's this heavy cognitive load on the players. You have to invent reasons for your secretive tiefling druid to walk up and talk to the aloof Aasimar fighter.
Oh, right. It always feels a bit forced.
It feels contrived, it's awkward. But what the storyteller did bypasses all of that artificial politeness.
So you're saying that by dropping them into a meat grinder, you strip away the social anxiety of role-playing?
Precisely. It creates shared trauma. You aren't awkwardly shaking hands over a pint. You are suddenly thrust into a desperate, bloody fight for survival.
Yeah, it's true.
The immediate death of those heavily voiced NPCs completely shatters the illusion of plot armor. The storyteller is sending a very clear message. The stakes here are real. You are not the chosen ones just because you have character sheets. Survival is going to require instant, unquestioning cooperation.
Nice to meet you. Watch out for that javelin. It really is the ultimate high-stakes icebreaker.
Yeah.
And they do manage to cooperate, but man, looking at the turn-by-turn breakdown of this combat, calling it a heroic victory is a massive stretch.
Oh, definitely.
This was easily the messiest, most chaotic brawl you could possibly
It
imagine.
was a disaster from a tactical standpoint. They're up against 5 orcs and 1 orc archer, and the action economy, the number of moves each side gets per round, is heavily against the player.
Everyone goes down. It's just a cycle of misery.
Yeah.
Boris gets knocked unconscious into the mud. Reedier goes down. Vitrovia takes massive damage. Half the party is bleeding out at any given moment.
They're burning through all their initial spell slots and resources just to heal each other enough to keep breathing.
But here is where the narrative actually gets stronger.
Yeah.
Because the friction between the players during the fight tells you exactly who they are.
Yes, the concept of friction as a storytelling tool is beautifully illustrated here. Seamless teamwork is boring. Chaos is revealing.
And nobody brings the chaos quite like Reedier. At the absolute height of the fight, when things are looking incredibly grim, Reedier decides to unleash his fire abilities. But he miscalculates, or, just doesn't care, and ends up lighting the wagon on fire.
The very same wooden wagon they were just using for cover.
Yes, and in the process of creating this inferno, Boris the cleric gets caught in the blast and literally loses his shield to the flames.
Mechanically, losing a shield at level 1 is a huge deal. It drops your armor class, it makes you significantly more vulnerable to the orcs still actively trying to kill you.
It's terrible.
But narratively, it's a profound moment of internal party friction. Remember, Red Ear and Boris were sitting together in that wagon just minutes prior, having a seemingly friendly ride.
I can't stop picturing Boris's perspective.
Right.
You barely survive an orc ambush. You're pulling yourself up out of the dirt. You're trying to heal your wounds, and you turn around and realize your brand new teammate just incinerated your primary defensive gear.
Yeah, oops.
It's exactly like sharing a foxhole with an arsonist. You survive the enemy only to realize your ally is a massive liability.
The arsonist in a foxhole analogy is spot on. It establishes Red Ear as a total wild card. And while Red Ear is busy burning down their own cover, Vitrovia is over on the other side of the battlefield, relying on tactics that are, frankly, deeply unhinged.
Unhinged is the right word.
As a wolf, she isn't just relying on typical bite and scratch attacks. She's engaging in psychological warfare.
Yeah, I was reading the combat logs, and I genuinely had to do a double take.
It's intense.
It describes Vitrovia literally groping one of the orcs to confuse it, and then, how do I phrase this so we keep things somewhat professional? She physically rips the anatomy off another orc, specifically to terrify the rest of them.
It's incredibly visceral, and from a gameplay perspective, intimidating an orc, a creature literally bred for warfare, is notoriously difficult.
Yeah, they don't scare easily.
Right. But Vitrovia's sheer savagery gets the job done. She bypasses traditional combat metrics and just goes straight for maximum psychological damage.
She out-monsters the monsters. She shows the orcs that whatever they brought to this ambush, she brought something significantly worse.
Exactly. And think about what that signals to the rest of the party. Whiffer, Boris, and Red Ear are watching this tiefling druid absolutely dismantle these enemies with extreme prejudice.
It's got to be terrifying.
It proves she is highly competent, but it also makes her deeply intimidating to her own allies. The combat establishes a vital truth for you, the listener. This group is going to struggle just as much with each other's extremes as they do with the actual villains of the campaign.
They're a danger to themselves.
Absolutely.
Which makes the immediate aftermath of the battle so incredibly tense. The dust settles. The orcs are dead. The plucky siblings are dead. Wayne is dead. The wagon is a smoldering ruin.
The adrenaline starts to wear off.
And the party still has to finish the half-day journey to Phandalin. And as they walk, the paranoia really starts to set in.
The suspicion centers entirely on Vitrovia. The rest of the group starts putting the timeline together.
Oh, right, because of the wagon stopping.
Yeah, they realize that if Vitrovia hadn't deliberately stepped out of the woods in her wolf form, Wayne wouldn't have pulled the reins. The wagon wouldn't have stopped exactly in the center of the orc kill zone.
It's a massive threat of distrust. Add to that the simmering competitive tension between Red Ear, the guy getting his hands dirty in the mud, and Whiffer, the celestial guy who literally swooped in from the heavens to save the day.
They are a powder keg.
But they finally limp into the town of Phandalin by evening, and they are greeted by the town's mayor, Harbin Wester.
And this interaction with Harbin Wester is a masterclass in world building.
Yeah.
Because when the mayor welcomes this blood-soaked, exhausted group, he strangely bypasses the pleasantries and immediately recognizes Red Ear. He knows exactly who he is.
Which made me immediately stop and think, wait, why would the mayor of this remote frontier town know a random, low-level adventurer who just rolled into town in a burnt wagon?
It's all about the illusion of a lived-in world. By having an established political figure recognize a player character right out of the gate, the storyteller implies a deep pre-existing history.
Okay, that makes sense.
It communicates to the players that the universe didn't just spawn into existence the moment they rolled their dice. These characters don't exist in a vacuum. They have past, they have debts, they have reputations that precede them.
And Red Ear's reaction to being recognized is so perfectly on brand for him.
Oh, it really is.
His first instinct, literally hours after watching innocent kids get slaughtered and surviving a near-death experience, is to aggressively establish his financial boundaries.
Yep.
He looks at Mayor Wester and makes it crystal clear that he will not be doing any local hero work for free. He is standing there, covered in orc blood, actively negotiating his hazard pay.
It completely grounds the fantasy in a gritty economic reality. Heroism might be a noble calling for someone like Whiffer, but nobility doesn't pay for rations, lodging, or, a new shield to replace the one Red Ear just accidentally burned to a crisp.
Good point.
It reinforces that pragmatism overrides idealism in this world.
That ruthless pragmatism doesn't just stop at contract negotiations either. We see exactly how far Red Ear is willing to take this survivalist mindset when they finally try to get some sleep.
Oh, the inn.
The party heads to the Stonehill Inn, run by a guy named Toblin Stonehill. But the storyteller immediately throws a logistical puzzle at them. The inn only had 3 free rooms, and there are 4 party members.
It's a classic low-stakes situational test. How does the newly formed group handle resource scarcity when they are exhausted?
Most groups would have a conversation. Maybe the Celestial Aasimar volunteers to sleep in the stable. Maybe 2 of them share a room.
Right, work it out together.
But not this group. Reader decides he's not paying and he's not sharing. He wanders the halls of the inn, tests the doors, and finds a 4th room that is already occupied by a local NPC known only as Pervy Pete.
The resolution here perfectly encapsulates the moral baseline of this entire party.
It's wild. Reader just walks into the room, knocks Pete out cold, ties him up in the corner, and goes to sleep in his bed for free.
It's incredible.
I was laughing out loud reading the breakdown of this scene because it feels like a wildly dysfunctional corporate team-building retreat.
Yeah.
You do the trust falls, you survive a deadly wilderness encounter together, and then you cap off the evening by committing casual kidnapping and assault just to save a couple of silver pieces on lodging.
It's hilarious, but it's also deeply illustrative. It highlights that we are not dealing with knights in shining armor.
Definitely not.
Yes, they just saved each other's lives from an orc raiding party, but they are not inherently good people. They are survivalists, first and foremost. They are chaotic. They are fiercely independent, and their moral compasses are incredibly flexible depending on what they need in the moment.
I think flexible is a very generous term for hog-tying a man named Pervy Pete so you can steal his mattress.
I don't know.
But you're right, it tells you exactly who Radier is, just as ripping the anatomy off an orc tells you exactly who Vitrovia is.
When you zoom out and look at the architecture of the Session Zero, it really is a phenomenal example of how to introduce characters to a harsh world and to each other. The storyteller bypassed all the polite, artificial tavern talk. By throwing them into immediate danger alongside innocent NPCs who were swiftly and brutally killed, the narrative stripped away any pretense.
You learn who a character truly is so much faster by watching how they handle an ambush, friendly fire, and a brunt wagon than you ever would by listening to them order an ale and recite their backstory.
Absolutely.
The best stories don't start with perfect, fully formed heroes sitting in a safe room waiting for a king to hand them a quest. They start with messy, flawed, highly suspicious people who are forced by sheer circumstance to survive a violent, unpredictable world together.
And right now, that shared trauma of survival is the absolutely only glue holding this fragile group together.
Which brings us to a final lingering thought for you to chew on. Think back to the very beginning of the deep dive, the inciting incident that set off this entire chain of blood and fire. Vitrovia, in her wolf form, deliberately stepped out of the tree line and stood in the middle of the path. She forced Wayne to stop the horses exactly where he did, right in the center of the kill zone where the orcs were waiting with drawn bows.
When you look at the sequence of events, the timing is undeniably suspicious.
So you have to ask yourself, was it just a tragic, horrible coincidence? Did she just happen to cross the road at the exact wrong millisecond? Or did Vitrovia, whether knowingly or unknowingly, act as the bait that walked her future companions right into a lethal trap?
It's a great question.
And as they sleep in Phandalin tonight, some in paid beds, one with the tied-up hostage in the corner, you have to wonder, how long can a party truly survive when their entire foundation is built on suspicion, orc blood, and a completely incinerated wagon?